We moved to Maple Street in early September, right before my daughter Emma started third grade. The neighborhood seemed perfect, quiet, tree-lined, full of families with kids. Exactly what we wanted after years in the city. Our neighbors, the Holloway family, lived in the Victorian house next door. Mr. and Mrs. Holloway were polite but distant. They had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, all around Emma's age. Perfect playmates, I thought. But I never saw the Holloway children during the day. At first I figured they were homeschooled, kept inside during daylight hours, but then Emma mentioned them. "The kids next door want to play with me," she said one evening after dinner. "That's great, honey. When did you meet them?" "Just now. They were in the backyard. They said I should come over tonight." I looked out the kitchen window. It was 8 p.m., nearly dark. And sure enough, 3 children were playing in the Holloway's backyard, running, laughing, playing tag in the fading light. "It's too late for playing tonight," I told Emma. "Maybe tomorrow after school." But the next day the Holloway children weren't outside. Their yard was empty all afternoon. Emma waited by the fence, but no one came out. Then, as soon as the sun set, I heard children's laughter. I looked out Emma's bedroom window and saw them, the 3 Holloway kids, playing in their yard in complete darkness. No porch lights, no flashlights. Just 3 small figures running and playing in the dark like it was the middle of the day. "See?" Emma said excitedly. "They're out now. Can I go play?" "No, honey. It's nighttime. Kids play during the day." "But they only come out at night. They told me. They said the sun hurts them." I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of parents only let their children play after dark? What kind of children preferred the darkness to daylight? And why did Emma look so eager to join them? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because the ending of this story will shake you in ways you never imagined. And tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this story? Now let's begin. Over the next week, I watched the pattern repeat. Every evening, as soon as darkness fell, the Holloway children emerged. They played in their yard until midnight or later, their pale faces occasionally visible in the moonlight. Emma became obsessed with them. She'd press her face against her bedroom window, watching them play, begging to go outside and join them. "Please, Dad, just for an hour. They're so nice. They said they want to show me something special." "What do they want to show you?" "Their playroom. It's underground. They said it's the best place to play because it's always dark there." Underground. Something about that word made my skin crawl. "Emma, I don't want you playing with those children." "Why not?" Her voice took on a whining tone. "You said we moved here so I could make friends. Friends who play during the day, normal friends. They are normal, they're just different." She ran to her room and slammed the door. My wife, Jessica, thought I was overreacting. "So the neighbors are a bit eccentric. Maybe the kids have a sun sensitivity condition. Some people do." "Then why don't we ever see the parents during the day either?" Jessica paused. "What do you mean?" "Have you ever seen Mr. or Mrs. Holloway in daylight? Ever?" She thought about it. No. But that doesn't mean anything. They could work night shifts. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong with the family next door. That night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to use the bathroom. As I passed Emma's room, I noticed her door was open. Her bed was empty. Panic seized me. I ran to the window and looked out. Emma was in the Holloway's backyard, holding hands with the 3 pale children, all of them forming a circle around what looked like a hole in the ground. They were leading her toward it. I ran outside in my pajamas, not bothering with shoes. "Emma, get back here right now." She turned to look at me, and in the moonlight her expression was blank, distant. Like she was sleepwalking. The Holloway children released her hands and stepped back into the shadows. I couldn't see their faces clearly, but I felt them watching me. I grabbed Emma's arm and pulled her back toward our house. She didn't resist, just followed limply, like a puppet with cut strings. "What were you doing out here?" "Playing," she said in a monotone voice. "They invited me to play underground." "You were sleepwalking. You were dreaming." But Emma's feet were dirty, grass-stained, and there was soil under her fingernails. She'd been digging or near digging. I carried her inside and locked every door and window. Jessica woke up and I told her what happened. She was horrified. "We need to talk to the Holloways. This is unacceptable. Their children lured our daughter outside in the middle of the night." The next morning we went next door. The house looked different in daylight, older, more decrepit, paint peeling, windows dark and dusty. The yard was overgrown. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Finally, the door opened a crack. Mrs. Holloway peered out, and I had to suppress a gasp. Her skin was paper white, almost translucent. Her eyes were deeply sunken. She looked like she'd been sick for years. "Yes?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mrs. Holloway, we need to talk about your children. Last night they convinced our daughter to come outside." "My children would never do that. They're very well behaved." "I saw them. They were holding her hands, leading her to some kind of hole in your yard." "There's no hole in our yard." Mrs. Holloway started to close the door. "Wait, please. I just want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Can we talk about boundaries, about appropriate times for the children to play together?" Mrs. Holloway's expression darkened. "My children can play whenever they like. It's not my fault your daughter wants to join them." She shut the door in my face. I couldn't let it go. Something was deeply wrong with the Holloway family. That night I did what I should have done before we moved in. I researched the house's history. What I found chilled me to the bone. 10 years ago, the Holloway family had lived there, parents and 3 children. One winter night there had been a fire. The entire family died, trapped in the basement where they'd been sleeping to stay warm during a power outage. The house had been empty ever since. Until 6 months ago when new owners moved in. But according to public records, the house was still officially unoccupied. No one had purchased it. No one was legally living there. I showed Jessica the articles, the death certificates, the photos of the family. The faces matched. The Holloways next door looked exactly like the Holloways who died 10 years ago. "This is impossible," Jessica whispered. "We've seen them, talked to them." "Have we? Or have we just seen shapes in the darkness and heard voices?" Emma had been listening from the stairs. "They're not dead. They're just different now. They live underground because they can't be in the sun anymore. They told me." "Emma, what else did they tell you?" "That everyone who dies in fire goes underground. That's where they play now. And they said—" She hesitated. "They said I should join them, that it's better down there. Always dark, always cool, never any pain." Jessica grabbed Emma and held her tight. "You're not going near that house again, do you understand me?" But that night I heard Emma's window opening. I caught Emma climbing out her window. She fought me, screaming in a voice that didn't sound like hers. "I have to go, they're waiting, I promised I'd play." We had to restrain her. Jessica held her while I nailed her window shut. Emma cried and screamed for hours, begging us to let her go to the Holloway house. "They need me," she sobbed. "They're so lonely underground. No one plays with them anymore." "Emma, those children are dead. They died in a fire 10 years ago." "They're not dead. They're just sleeping underground until they can wake up properly. And they need more friends to wake up with them." The next day I called the police, told them everything. The nocturnal children, the family that shouldn't exist, Emma's behavior. The officer who came was sympathetic but skeptical. "Mr. Peterson, I understand you're concerned, but we can't investigate people for letting their kids play at night. And the house has been inspected multiple times. It's structurally sound, no fire damage. Because it was rebuilt. But the family living there died. I have proof. Old records. The house has had several owners since then. Look, if you see actual evidence of child endangerment, call us. But right now, this sounds like a neighborhood dispute." After he left, I made a decision. I was going to find that hole in the Holloway's yard. I was going to see what was underground that made their children, or whatever they were, so insistent that Emma join them. That night, I waited until 2 a.m. The Holloway children were in their yard, playing as usual. I watched from my window until they went inside their house. Then I grabbed a flashlight and climbed over the fence into their yard. The hole wasn't hard to find. It was in the center of the yard, covered with a wooden board. I lifted the board and shined my light down. Steps, earthen steps leading down into darkness, and I could hear something from below, children's laughter, echoing and distorted. I descended. The underground chamber was bigger than it should have been. Much bigger. It stretched beyond where the property lines should end, a network of earthen tunnels reinforced with old wooden beams, and it was full of children, dozens of them, maybe more, all pale, all dressed in old-fashioned clothes from different eras, Victorian dresses, 1950s shorts, 1980s windbreakers. They were playing in the darkness, laughing, running through the tunnels. None of them noticed me at first. They were too absorbed in their games. Then I saw the Holloway children. The three of them were standing together, and they were looking directly at me, smiling. "Mr. Peterson," the oldest boy said, "we're glad you came. Now you can see why Emma should join us." "What is this place?" "Our playroom, the place where burned children go. Every child who dies in fire comes here eventually. We all play together, forever." "Emma didn't die in a fire." "Not yet," the girl said, "but she will. We've seen it. That's why we invited her, so she'd already have friends when she arrives." My blood went cold. "What do you mean she will?" "The fire is coming. December 19th. It always comes. And when it does, Emma will join us. Unless—" The boy tilted his head. "Unless you join us first. Adults can come too if they're invited." I backed toward the stairs. "Emma's not coming here. Ever." "She doesn't have a choice. The fire has already been decided. But you do have a choice. You can come willingly and save her. One adult in exchange for one child, that's the trade. I'm leaving, and I'm sealing this entrance." I ran up the stairs. Behind me, I heard the children laughing, dozens of voices echoing in the darkness. I replaced the wooden board and ran back to my house. Jessica was waiting in the kitchen. "Where were you?" "Next door, in their underground tunnels. There are dozens of dead children down there, and they said Emma is going to die in a fire, December 19th. "That's insane." "They offered me a trade. Me for Emma, one adult to spare one child." Jessica stared at me. "You're not seriously considering—" "Of course not. But we need to leave. We need to move out of this house before December 19th. But when we looked at the calendar, my heart sank. December 19th was tomorrow. We packed frantically, threw clothes and essentials into suitcases. We'd stay at a hotel, figure out the rest later. The important thing was getting Emma away from this house before whatever the Holloway children had predicted could happen. But Emma wouldn't leave her room. She'd locked herself in and refused to come out. "Emma, we have to go, right now." "I'm not leaving. My friends need me." I broke down the door. Emma was standing at her window, the window I'd nailed shut. It was open. The nails lay on the floor, pulled out from the inside. "How did you—" "They helped me. They're stronger than you think. And they said if I don't come down willingly, they'll make the fire come faster." "There's not going to be any fire. We're leaving, right now." I grabbed Emma. She screamed and fought, but I carried her down the stairs. Jessica had the car running in the driveway. We were 10 feet from the car when I smelled smoke. I turned and saw flames in our living room window, fire spreading impossibly fast. The entire first floor was already engulfed. "How?" Jessica screamed. "We didn't leave anything on." The fire wasn't natural, couldn't be natural. It had appeared in seconds, spread in moments, and standing in the Holloway's yard, illuminated by the flames, were the 3 children, watching, smiling. "Daddy!" Emma screamed. "They did it. They started the fire because I wouldn't come." The fire department arrived within minutes, but it was too late. Our house burned to the ground. Everything we owned destroyed. We stood on the street, covered in soot, watching our home collapse. And through the smoke I saw more children emerging from the hole in the Holloway's yard, dozens of them crawling up from underground to watch the fire. One of the Holloway boys walked over to us. "You should have accepted the trade, Mr. Peterson. Now you've lost everything, but don't worry, Emma's still invited. The fire didn't take her yet. Stay away from my daughter." "We can't. She's marked now. She survived a fire meant for her. That makes her special. That makes her one of us, even if she's still breathing." The boy walked back to the other children, and they all descended into the hole together, disappearing underground. We stayed with my brother across town. Insurance would eventually cover the house, but the investigation was ongoing. The fire marshal couldn't determine a cause. No electrical fault, no gas leak, no evidence of arson. It had just started. Emma became withdrawn. She stopped eating, stopped talking. She just sat at the window, staring in the direction of Maple Street. "She's waiting for them," Jessica said. "She thinks they're coming for her." On the third night at my brother's house, I woke up to find Emma's bed empty again. This time I knew where she'd gone. I drove back to Maple Street at 3 a.m. Our burned house was a black skeleton, but next door the Holloway house stood intact, and Emma was in the yard, standing at the edge of the hole, looking down. "Emma, step away from there." She turned to look at me. Her eyes were different, darker, hollower. "They said you have until the next full moon to decide. Accept the trade, or I join them anyway. Those are the only options." "That's not you talking. That's them." "It's me. It's what I want. I've seen Underground, Daddy. It's better there. No school, no rules, just playing forever. They said I can come early if I want. I don't have to wait for another fire." "Emma, please, you're alive. You have your whole life ahead of you. But they're my friends, real friends. They understand me. They don't make me do homework or eat vegetables or go to bed early. They just want to play." She took a step closer to the hole. "Emma, don't." "Goodbye, Daddy. Maybe I'll see you underground someday." She jumped. I lunged forward and caught her wrist just as she went over the edge. She dangled in the hole, the darkness below her seeming to pull at her like gravity. "Let me go. I want to be with them." "No." I pulled with all my strength. She was so light, too light, like she was already becoming something other than human. I managed to drag her up and away from the hole. She fought me, scratching and biting, but I held on. I carried her back to the car and locked her in. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The Holloway children stood at the edge of their property, watching us leave, and I knew this wasn't over. The next full moon was in 2 weeks, and I had a terrible decision to make. Emma deteriorated rapidly. She stopped eating entirely, stopped sleeping, just stared at walls and whispered to voices we couldn't hear. Doctors found nothing physically wrong. Psychologists suggested trauma from the fire. But I knew the truth. Emma was being called underground, and the longer she resisted, the more it drained her. Jessica found me crying in our temporary bedroom one night. "We're going to lose her," I said. "Whether she goes underground or wastes away up here, we're losing her." "Then what do we do?" "The trade. They offered a trade. Me for her." "No, absolutely not. Jess, look at her. She's dying. Slowly, but she's dying. The only way to break their hold is to give them what they want. Then we all go underground as a family." I looked at my wife. "What?" "If you go, I go. If Emma goes, I go. We stay together. That's what families do." But I knew that wasn't the answer. If we all went underground, we'd all be lost. There had to be another way. I went back to the property records, studied the history of the house, of the land it was built on, and I found something. The Holloway house was built in 1890, on the site of an old children's hospital that had burned down in 1887. 32 children had died in that fire. And before the hospital, the land had been a church with a basement school. Fire in 1854. 18 children dead. And before that, a farmhouse with a root cellar. Fire in 1821. 5 children dead. The land itself was cursed. Every structure built on it eventually burned, and every child who died in those fires went underground. The network of tunnels beneath the Holloway house wasn't just a playroom, it was a trap, a collection point, a place where burned children accumulated over centuries, and now they wanted Emma, wanted to add her to their number before she'd even died. I found a reference to someone who'd researched the property before, Professor Catherine Reeves at the local university. She'd written a paper about localized death phenomena. I called her. "The Holloway property," she said immediately when I mentioned the address. "I've been tracking it for 20 years. Every family that moves there eventually experiences a fire, and if there are children—" She paused. "I'm sorry. How many children do you have?" "One daughter, Emma." "Get her away from there, as far as you can." We did. But they're still calling to her. They said she's marked. Professor Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "Then there's only one way to save her. The network has to be destroyed, all of it. Every tunnel, every chamber. collapsed the entire underground system so the burned children have nowhere to exist. How? Fire. The same thing that made them can unmake them, but it has to be a special fire. Sanctified, blessed, a cleansing fire, not a consuming one. She gave me a list of things I'd need: salt, holy water, specific prayers, and courage to go back underground one more time. The full moon was in 3 days. I had to act fast. I went back to Maple Street on the night before the full moon. The Holloway children were waiting for me in their yard. "Mr. Peterson, have you come to accept the trade?" "No, I've come to end this." I descended into the hole before they could stop me. The underground chamber was full of children as before, dozens of pale faces turning to look at me in the darkness. I began spreading salt in a circle, pouring holy water, speaking the prayers Professor Reeves had taught me. The children hissed and backed away from the salt lines. "What are you doing?" the Holloway girls shrieked. "You can't do this. This is our place." "This is a prison for all of you. You've been trapped here for decades, some of you for centuries. It's time to let go." I lit the sanctified torch. The flame burned blue-white, unnaturally bright. As I touched it to the wooden support beams, the fire spread, but instead of consuming, it cleansed. The children began to scream, but not in pain, in release. One by one, they started to fade, their forms becoming transparent, then dissolving entirely. The underground chamber began to collapse as the tunnels themselves dissolved under the cleansing fire. I ran for the stairs. Behind me, I heard the voices of dozens of children, not screaming anymore, but calling out in joy. They were finally free, finally able to move on. I emerged from the hole just as the entire underground network collapsed. The Holloway house groaned and tilted, one side sinking as the ground beneath it gave way. The 3 Holloway children stood at the edge of their yard, watching their house fall. They looked at me with expressions I couldn't read. "Thank you," the oldest boy said quietly. "We've been waiting so long for someone brave enough to do that." Then they faded too, like smoke on the wind. The next morning, Emma woke up for the first time in days. She looked at me with clear eyes. Her own eyes, not the hollow darkness that had been there before. "Daddy, I had the strangest dreams." She didn't remember anything about the underground children, didn't remember being called to join them. The cleansing fire had broken their hold completely. Professor Reeves came to visit us a week later. She'd heard about the Holloway house collapse, about the sinkhole that had swallowed most of the property. "You did it," she said. "For you actually cleansed the site. I've been studying that location for 20 years and never had the courage to try. Why didn't you warn previous families?" I tried. No one ever believes until it's too late. Most families just move away after the fire, traumatized but alive. You're the first who stayed to fight back. My daughter almost died. But she didn't. You saved her, and you saved all those children who'd been trapped underground. That's more than most people could say. After she left, I went to check on Emma. She was drawing pictures, something she hadn't done since before we moved to Maple Street. "What are you drawing, honey?" She held up the paper. It was a picture of children playing in sunlight, dozens of children, all smiling, all in a bright meadow. The kids who used to be underground. I saw them in my dream last night. They were thanking me. Thanking you. For having a brave daddy who set them free. They said they're playing in the real world now. Not the dark one. The bright one where people go after they're properly dead. I hugged Emma tight, grateful she was safe, grateful she was still my little girl. But that night I went outside to look at the collapsed Holloway property. The hole was filled in now, the house condemned and scheduled for demolition, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the empty lot next to the Holloway property, construction equipment was parked. A sign announced, "Future site of Maple Street Elementary School, opening fall 2025. They were building a school, on land adjacent to the cursed property, ground that likely connected to the same underground network. I called Professor Reeves immediately. "They're building a school next to the site." "Oh God, the tunnels, do they extend?" "They must. The network was huge. I only collapsed the section under the Holloway house. The rest could still be intact. Then the burned children could return. New tunnels, new collection point, new hunting ground. What do we do? You move. You get Emma as far from Maple Street as possible, and you pray that no other families with children move into this neighborhood. But I couldn't just leave. Couldn't let other children be targeted. I made another decision that night. I bought the empty lot, used every penny of our insurance money and took out massive loans, but I bought it. And instead of letting them build a school, I had the entire lot excavated. Every tunnel collapsed, every chamber destroyed, 5 feet of concrete poured over the entire area. We went bankrupt, lost everything. But the underground network was truly gone now. No more burned children could be collected. No more living children could be called down. Emma asks me sometimes why we live in a small apartment now instead of a house, why we don't have the things we used to have. I tell her it's because Daddy made a good investment, protected something important. She doesn't need to know she was the thing I was protecting, and she doesn't need to know that somewhere, in dozens of other neighborhoods across the country, there are probably other houses like the Holloway house, other underground chambers, other collections of burned children waiting to add to their numbers. But at least Maple Street is safe now. At least Emma can grow up without ever knowing how close she came to joining them underground. My neighbor's kids only came out at night. My daughter said they invited her to play underground, and I destroyed their world to make sure she'd never have to accept that invitation. 5 years have passed since the night I collapsed the underground chambers. Emma is 13 now, a normal teenager with normal concerns. School, friends, social media. She doesn't remember the Holloway children at all. The trauma therapist said that was normal, that young minds often block out things too terrible to process. We rebuilt our lives slowly, got back on our feet financially, moved to a different part of town, far from Maple Street. I check Emma's windows every night, but they're always secure. Nothing calls to her anymore. Professor Reeves still emails me occasionally. She's found 17 other properties across the state with similar histories. Locations where multiple fires occurred over decades, where children died and something underground collected them. She's documenting them, trying to warn people, but like she said, no one believes until it's too late. I drive past Maple Street sometimes. The lot I bought is just empty concrete now. The Holloway house was demolished years ago. New families have moved into the surrounding homes, unaware of what used to exist beneath their feet. But last week, Emma came home from school with a flyer. "Dad, look, my class is taking a field trip next month. We're going to explore some old tunnels under the city. It's supposed to be really cool. They're from the 1800s. I looked at the flyer. My hands started shaking. The tunnels they'd be exploring ran directly under where Maple Street used to connect to downtown, parts of the old network that I hadn't known existed. "Emma, I don't think you should go on this trip." "Why not? It's educational. The teacher said it's perfectly safe." "Please trust me on this. Some old places should stay closed." She rolled her eyes, typical teenager response, but agreed. I called the school and had Emma excused from the trip. Then I called Professor Reeves. The tunnel system is bigger than we thought. It extends under the downtown area. "How much of it?" "I don't know, but they're giving tours to school children. We need to find out how extensive it is. And if it connects to more collection points? Then we do what we did before, we collapse all of it. I'm not a hero. I'm just a father who got lucky, who acted in time to save his daughter. But now I understand what Professor Reeves has been doing for 20 years, documenting, tracking, trying to protect children from something most people don't believe exists. Yesterday I quit my job, told Jessica I was starting a new career as a historical site consultant. She doesn't need to know that what I'm really doing is hunting for underground chambers across the country, finding them before other families stumble into the same nightmare we did. Emma caught me looking at maps last night. Maps of old fire sites, old schools, old hospitals, places where children died in flames. "Dad, what's all this?" "Just research, honey, making sure certain places stay safe." She looked at the maps more closely, and for just a moment I saw recognition in her eyes. Like some deep part of her remembered the Holloway children, remembered their invitation. "Dad, were there really kids who lived underground? Or was that just nightmares?" I could have lied, should have lied, but instead I said, "There were. But they're gone now. They can't hurt anyone anymore." Did they want to hurt me? They wanted you to join them, and I couldn't let that happen. Emma hugged me tight. Thank you for keeping me safe. After she went to bed, I added 3 more locations to my map, 3 more sites where children had died in fires, 3 more potential collection points. Professor Reeves is flying in next week. We're going to investigate them together, and if we find more underground chambers, more burned children waiting to collect the living, we'll do what needs to be done, because the Holloway children weren't unique. They were just one branch of something much larger, something that's been collecting burned children for centuries in dozens of locations, building an underground network of the dead. And somewhere in that network, children who died decades or centuries ago are still playing in the darkness, still waiting for new friends to join them, still calling to the living with promises of eternal games in eternal night. My neighbor's kids only came out at night. My daughter said they invited her to play underground. I destroyed their world, but I know now that there are other worlds, other underground places, other children waiting, and I'll keep destroying them one by one for as long as it takes, because every child deserves to play in the sunlight, not in the darkness beneath.